Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered why you feel uneasy when you're alone with your own thoughts? Why silence feels louder than noise? Why, in the quiet corners of your mind, there's a stranger you never want to meet? Stay with me, because what you're about to realize might change how you see yourself forever. You see, the greatest fear of mankind is not death, not failure, but the fear of meeting ourselves. The illusion of separation is the root of almost every fear you have ever known. From the moment you were born, you were told that you are an individual, an isolated being with your own boundaries, your own mind, and your own destiny. You were taught that there is a you inside your body and a world out there that you must navigate, conquer, or protect yourself from. But this idea, while it seems natural, is a dream. It's a hypnotic illusion that has been passed down through generations, convincing you that you are something smaller than what you truly are. And in believing that illusion, you have created a constant tension within yourself, a sense of separation that fuels anxiety, loneliness, and the unshakable fear of existence itself. You see, the illusion works subtly. You walk through life feeling as though you are a separate observer, looking at life as though through a window. You watch people, events, and circumstances as if they are outside of you. But the truth is far deeper than that. You are not the observer of life, you are life observing itself. The wave does not watch the ocean. It is the ocean in a particular form. And yet, we spend our lives trying to become something else, something better, because we believe we are apart from the whole. That belief gives birth to insecurity. When you think you are separate, you begin to compare. You begin to compete. You begin to fear that you will be left behind, unloved, unnoticed. The illusion of separation teaches you that you must survive, that life is a battlefield, that others are your rivals, and that you must protect this small self at all costs. And so you live in defense. You build walls around your emotions. You hide your weaknesses. You measure your worth through possessions and validation. You become terrified of vulnerability because to be open is to risk being hurt. But here is the paradox: in protecting yourself from pain, you also shut yourself off from love. You become so busy maintaining the walls of your ego that you forget the freedom of being boundless. The illusion extends even deeper into the way you see nature, time, and even the divine. You think of nature as something you walk through, not something you are. You think of time as something that carries you forward, instead of something that unfolds within you. You think of God as something above or beyond, instead of the life that breathes you into existence at this very moment. The illusion convinces you that you are an outsider in a universe that doesn't belong to you, and this makes you afraid. Because how can one not fear a world that seems foreign and uncontrollable? But if you could see, even for a moment, that you are not separate from what you experience, that the sound of the wind, the beating of your heart, the laughter of a child, the movement of the stars, all of it is the same happening, then fear would begin to dissolve. The barrier between you and would melt away. You would realize that the one who breathes and the breath itself are not two things. You would realize that the universe has never been against you, because there was never any you for it to oppose. There has only ever been one continuous dance, one endless play of energy pretending to be many forms. The illusion of separation is powerful because it feels real. It feels real when someone rejects you. It feels real when you lose something you love. It feels real when your body aches, when your thoughts spiral, when you're told that you are not enough. But all of these are ripples in the same ocean. You cannot separate the wave from the sea. When you begin to see that your joy and your sorrow, your fear and your love, your life and your death all rise and fall within the same eternal being, you begin to wake up. You stop fighting the current and start flowing with it. Every religion, every philosophy, every spiritual path is, in its purest essence, pointing toward this one truth, that there is no real distance between you and everything else. The mind creates division, but the heart knows unity. The mind says, this is me and that is you, but the heart whispers, we are the same. And in that recognition, the fear of yourself fades. Because how can you be afraid of something that is not apart from you? The moment you see through the illusion of separation, the universe becomes a mirror reflecting itself in infinite ways. You stop trying to belong because you understand you always have. The inner stranger is the one you've carried with you since the beginning, the part of yourself that watches silently while the rest of you pretends to be who the world expects. It's the self beneath the self, the one that knows, feels, and remembers everything you've buried under years of pretending. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding that stranger. They distract themselves with work, with conversation, with endless screens and noise, because silence has a way of bringing that hidden presence closer. And when you begin to feel it, when it stirs in the quiet, you mistake that feeling for discomfort, when in truth, it's recognition. You're not afraid of darkness, you're afraid of your own reflection inside it. The fear of yourself is not the fear of evil, it's the fear of power. It's the fear of seeing how limitless, how raw, how alive you actually are. You were taught to divide yourself early in life, to be good, to be polite, to be acceptable. Every time you were told, don't cry, don't be angry, don't say that, you learned to hide a piece of yourself. Those pieces never vanished, they sank beneath the surface, forming the stranger you now call your shadow. You wear a mask that fits the world, and you believe it's you. But deep within, the unmasked self waits patiently, knowing that one day you will need to meet it again. The longer you run from it, the louder it knocks. It shows up as anxiety, as emptiness, as a sudden wave of sadness that seems to come from nowhere. It shows up when you're alone at night and you realize there's a voice inside you whispering truths you don't want to hear. That's not madness. That's your soul asking to be seen. This inner stranger holds everything you've rejected: your anger, your passion, your grief, your longing, your creativity, your chaos. You've been conditioned to think that these things make you weak or unworthy, so you built walls to contain them. But repression is not control. Whatever you repress does not disappear. It only grows in the dark, waiting for acknowledgement. That's why people often sabotage themselves, why they fall into patterns they swore to avoid. Because the part of them they've ignored refuses to be forgotten. It will rise in any form necessary until you listen. The stranger within you is not an enemy, it's the missing piece of your wholeness. Meeting this self requires courage, not the kind that conquers, but the kind that surrenders. You cannot face the inner stranger with judgment or fear, you must face it with openness. The moment you stop trying to fix it, it begins to speak. It tells you where your pain began, why your heart closed, why you search endlessly for validation. It reveals how you became disconnected from your own essence. It's not here to destroy you, it's here to remind you who you were before you began pretending. The more you listen, the more you see that what you thought was dark was simply unloved. Every fear, every shadow, every ache is a child of your own being, asking to be brought home. We fear this meeting because it feels like death, and in a way it is the death of the false self. The persona you show the world begins to dissolve when you meet the truth beneath it. That's why people cling to distractions. It's easier to keep running than to watch your identity fall apart. But there's freedom in that falling. When you stop defending the image of who you think you should be, you discover the simplicity of being who you already are. You realize that the stranger is not strange at all. It's your most familiar essence, the part of you that has always known peace, even when your mind forgot. There's a moment in everyone's life when the mask begins to crack, when the persona no longer fits the size of your soul. You can feel it as restlessness, as if something within you is trying to break through the surface. You might try to silence it by changing your environment, your relationships, your habits, but it keeps following you because you can't escape yourself. The inner stranger is not somewhere else. It's in the center of your being, waiting for you to stop running long enough to recognize it. When you finally meet this self, there's an extraordinary stillness. The war inside ends not because one side wins, but because both sides see they were never separate. The shadow and the light are not enemies, they are partners in the same dance. And the moment you embrace that stranger as part of you, fear begins to dissolve into understanding. You stop looking for yourself in other people's eyes. You stop needing approval to exist. You stop fearing what you feel, because you know every feeling is simply life moving through you. The stranger becomes the friend, the guide, the mirror, and you realize you were never two. There was never an inner and outer self, only one continuous consciousness remembering itself through time. The game of control is the most subtle and exhausting game you'll ever play because it disguises itself as wisdom, responsibility, and strength. From the time you were a child, you were taught that control is safety. You learn to control your actions to please others, your emotions to appear strong, your thoughts to stay disciplined, your future to feel secure. And yet, no matter how carefully you manage your life, everything eventually slips through your fingers. The weather changes, people leave, plans fall apart, and your own mind betrays you with feelings you didn't choose. Deep down, you know that life cannot be controlled, but you've been conditioned to believe that losing control means losing yourself. That belief keeps you locked in constant tension, a silent war against the natural rhythm of existence. Every moment, the mind tries to organize reality, to shape it into predictable patterns. It says, if I can just make things right, if I can just fix this or prevent that, then I'll be okay. But control is built on fear, the fear that without it, everything will collapse. You hold tightly to identities, to routines, to people, to beliefs, because they give you the illusion of stability. Yet, the tighter you hold, the more fragile everything becomes. The attempt to control life is like trying to cage the wind. The more you grasp, the less you hold. Control feels safe, but it's the very thing that creates the chaos you fear. You see, life is not a machine, it's a mystery. It doesn't move in straight lines or obey the rules of your expectations. It dances, it shifts, it transforms. The ocean does not ask the wave to stay in shape, nor does the flower demand that the wind behave. Only the human mind tries to bend the rhythm of life to its own will, forgetting that it too is part of the same flow. And because of that, suffering arises. The mind wants permanence in an impermanent world. It wants guarantees in a universe that was never built on certainty. It wants control over something that was never meant to be controlled, you. When you try to control yourself, you divide yourself. One part of you becomes the master, the other becomes the servant. One part commands, don't feel this, don't think that, don't fail, don't fall. The other part silently resists. This creates an internal struggle that never ends. You begin to believe that you must discipline yourself into peace, as if peace was something that could be forced. But peace is not achieved through control. It's discovered through surrender. It's not found by dominating your thoughts or emotions, but by allowing them to move freely, without fear. The mind that tries to control everything is the same mind that prevents you from being alive in the present. Control is the mind's way of avoiding vulnerability. If you can predict the future, you won't be hurt. If you can manage love, you won't be rejected. If you can discipline your emotions, you won't be overwhelmed. But this armor you build around yourself eventually becomes your prison. You stop feeling deeply because feeling deeply means losing control. You stop loving freely because love means surrender. You stop living fully because living fully means embracing the unknown. The irony is that what you resist most, uncertainty, is the only place where real freedom exists. When you loosen your grip, something remarkable happens. Life begins to move through you effortlessly. You laugh more easily. You forgive more quickly. You let go without regret. The river of existence carries you exactly where you need to be, even if it's not where you planned. This doesn't mean you become passive or careless. It means you act with awareness, not out of fear. It means you trust the intelligence of life more than the anxiety of your mind. You realize that every moment is unfolding exactly as it must, whether or not it fits your expectations. People often misunderstand surrender as weakness, but surrender is not submission, it's alignment. It's recognizing that life doesn't happen to you, it happens through you. The more you try to control it, the more you resist your own nature. When you stop controlling, you return to harmony. You begin to notice that everything is already moving with precision. That existence is not chaos, it's perfect timing disguised as uncertainty. The tree doesn't control its growth, yet it becomes majestic. The stars don't control their shine, yet they light the sky. So why do you think you must control yourself to be worthy of peace? When you finally let go, you realize that control was never power, it was fear wearing a mask. True power is trust. Trust in life, trust in the intelligence of the moment, trust that even what feels like loss or failure is part of a greater unfolding. The game of control ends the moment you see it for what it is, an endless chase for safety in a world that was never unsafe to begin with. The universe doesn't need your control, it only asks for your participation. When you stop trying to control life, life begins to live you, and for the first time you feel what it means to be free. The mirror of awareness is always present, quietly reflecting everything you are, everything you think, and everything you feel, whether you recognize it or not. It is the silent witness that has watched you through every moment of joy, sorrow, confusion, and change. Most people never truly look into this mirror because it reveals more than they are ready to see. They prefer the distorted reflections of identity, reputation, and memory, the comfortable illusions that tell them who they think they are. But the mirror of awareness shows no lies, no masks. No filters. It simply reveals what is. When you stop trying to define, control, or fix yourself, you begin to see through this mirror clearly, and in that seeing, something extraordinary happens. The boundaries between who you think you are and what you experience begin to dissolve. For most of your life, you have believed that you are your thoughts, your emotions, your story. You say, I am happy, I am sad, I am angry, as though the passing clouds of feeling define the sky of your being. But awareness is not the cloud, it is the sky itself. It doesn't come and go with moods or memories. It remains untouched, steady, infinite. The problem is that you've been trained to identify with the passing movements instead of the stillness that holds them. You've been looking at the reflections without realizing you are the mirror. And so, you chase your own image through time, mistaking every reflection for truth. Awareness is not something you can achieve, it's something you already are. The more you try to reach it, the more distant it seems, because effort comes from the assumption that you are not yet aware. But awareness has never left you. It is what is looking through your eyes right now, what is listening to these words, what feels your heartbeat without effort. It doesn't belong to your personality, your history, or your identity. It is older than thought, deeper than emotion, and larger than any belief you hold. When you recognize this, your entire relationship with yourself changes. You stop fighting your thoughts. You stop judging your emotions. You simply watch. And in that watching, everything becomes clear. The mirror of awareness shows you that nothing needs to be fixed because nothing is truly broken. The idea of brokenness exists only when you confuse yourself with what passes through you. A storm may fill the sky, but the sky itself is never harmed. In the same way, pain, fear, and doubt may fill your mind, but they do not define what you are. They are experiences, not identity. Awareness does not cling to them. It lets them move through, knowing that every wave eventually returns to stillness. When you begin to live from that recognition, peace arises naturally, not as something earned or constructed, but as the natural state of your being. Most people fear this awareness because it demands the death of illusion. It means letting go of every label, every role, every concept that has given you comfort or purpose. It means seeing that the person you thought you were is only a collection of ideas, stories, and reactions, a temporary reflection on the surface of something infinite. And that can feel like losing yourself, but what is truly lost is only the false self, the one that never really existed. When the reflection fades, the mirror remains. That mirror is what you've been searching for in relationships, achievements, and experiences, because deep down every desire is a longing to return to the wholeness of pure being. The more you rest in awareness, the more you notice its simplicity. You realize that awareness doesn't try to change what it sees. It simply allows it. The flower grows, the leaf falls, the day and awareness watches without resistance. When you apply that same acceptance inward, something profound unfolds. You no longer divide your experience into good and bad, right and wrong, worthy and unworthy. You see all of it as one movement of life, one eternal expression of the same consciousness. In that understanding, compassion is born, not because you try to be kind, but because you can no longer see separation. You see yourself in everyone and everything. The mirror of awareness has no opinion, no preference, no judgment. It does not take sides. It simply reflects truth, and truth, when seen clearly, brings freedom. You don't have to purify yourself to look into it. The act of looking is the purification. Every moment of presence cleanses you of illusion, because awareness and truth are not two different things. When you stop running, stop analyzing, stop trying to reach a better version of yourself, you stand before the mirror and realize that what you've been seeking is the one who is already looking. And in that realization, all effort falls away. What remains is not something you achieve. It's what you've always been, the clear, boundless, infinite awareness through which all of life moves and reflects itself endlessly. The dance of acceptance begins the moment you stop trying to change what already is. It begins when you realize that life does not need to be fixed, that you do not need to be repaired, and that every feeling, every moment, every flaw, and every imperfection has its own rhythm within the grand choreography of existence. For most of your life, you have been taught to resist, to strive, to improve, to fight against what you are and what you feel. You were told that happiness lies on the other side of effort. That peace must be earned, that love must be deserved. But the truth is simpler and far more beautiful. Peace does not come from changing the rhythm of the dance. It comes from learning to move with it. Acceptance is not a form of surrender to weakness. It is the recognition that life was never your enemy. When you fight against what is, you divide yourself. One part of you becomes the judge, the other becomes the accused. One side says, I should be different, while the other side silently suffers the weight of that rejection. You try to control your emotions, to silence your pain, to cover your insecurities, and yet they return over and over, asking to be seen. You cannot silence what is asking to be understood. The more you resist a feeling, the louder it becomes, because resistance feeds the very thing it seeks to destroy. Acceptance, on the other hand, has no fight in it. It simply allows. And what is allowed begins to soften. Pain, when accepted, begins to reveal its message. Fear, when accepted, begins to lose its sharpness. Everything that is met with awareness instead of resistance starts to dissolve back into peace. Acceptance does not mean you stop growing or that you give up your dreams. It means you stop waging war with yourself while you grow. It means you allow life to unfold as it must, without believing that every moment needs to fit into your idea of perfection. To accept something does not mean you agree with it. It means you understand that it exists and that your suffering comes not from the event itself, but from your resistance to it. The rain falls whether you curse it or bless it. The river flows whether you swim against it or move with it. Life has its own current, and the more you try to fight it, the more exhausted you become. When you begin to accept yourself as you are, not as the world wants you to be, you open a door that has been closed for too long. You begin to feel the quiet relief of being whole. You stop searching for approval because you realize that the one who has been judging you was never real. The persona you built to be accepted by others is a mask that can never truly fit because it was made to hide what was real. The dance of acceptance begins when you remove that mask and allow the rawness of your being to breathe again. There is something profoundly beautiful about the parts of yourself you once rejected. The sadness, the confusion, the imperfection. They are not mistakes in your design, they are brushstrokes in the masterpiece of your becoming. Acceptance is the language of love itself. Love does not ask you to be perfect before it arrives to remind you that you already are. When you accept your flaws, your emotions, your story, you no longer look at yourself through the eyes of shame. You look through the eyes of truth. You begin to see that even the moments you regret, even the wounds you carry, have guided you to this point of understanding. Nothing has been wasted, because every experience, pleasant or painful, has been part of the unfolding of your consciousness. Acceptance transforms everything it touches, because it turns rejection into compassion, fear into awareness, and struggle into stillness. The dance of acceptance is not passive. It's alive, fluid, and intimate. It is the rhythm of surrender that moves through every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of letting go. It's saying yes to the present, even when it arrives in forms you didn't expect. It's trusting that what is happening right now is not against you, but for you, even if you can't yet see how. Acceptance allows you to move with life instead of against it, to dance with uncertainty instead of fearing it, to rest in the mystery instead of trying to control it. When you stop trying to change the song and simply begin to dance, you realize that the music was never wrong. Every sorrow, every joy, every silence has its place in the symphony of your being. The dance of acceptance teaches you to love yourself not despite your darkness, but through it. It shows you that peace is not found in perfection, but in presence. It reminds you that the heart becomes free, not by holding on, but by opening, again and again, to the truth of what is. Freedom through surrender is one of the most misunderstood truths of life, because to the human mind, surrender sounds like defeat. It sounds like giving up, losing control, letting go of power. But in reality, surrender is the opposite. It is the doorway to the deepest form of freedom a human being can ever know. You have spent most of your life trying to hold the reins, trying to guide every situation, every emotion, every outcome toward what you think it should be. You have struggled against time, against people, against yourself, believing that only through control will you find peace. Yet control has never brought peace. It has only deepened your fear. The harder you try to hold on, the more fragile everything feels. The more you try to secure your world, the more uncertain it becomes. Life has a way of showing you, again and again, that it cannot be managed like a machine. It can only be lived. Surrender is not about giving up your will, but about aligning it with something greater than your mind can comprehend. It is the recognition that life is infinitely more intelligent than your plans, that there is a rhythm already moving through every experience, guiding you even when you can't see where it's leading. When you surrender, you stop fighting that rhythm. You stop trying to bend existence to your expectations, and instead you begin to flow with what is. You begin to trust the unseen current that has carried you since the moment you took your first breath. This trust is not blind, it is the deepest form of intelligence. It knows that even when the road is unclear, life knows the way. You see, the ego believes that freedom comes from control, but that is its greatest illusion. True freedom is not the ability to make everything happen your way, it's the realization that you don't need to. It's the relief of no longer carrying the impossible burden of managing the universe. When you surrender, you are not abandoning your power, you are returning it to its rightful source. You are allowing the natural intelligence of existence to move through you, to think through you, to breathe through you. You become a vessel instead of a controller, a participant instead of a ruler. And in that participation, there is a peace so vast that it cannot be disturbed by circumstance. Surrender doesn't mean you stop acting or caring. It means your actions no longer come from fear. You still move, create, love, and live, but without the constant anxiety of trying to control outcomes. You stop asking, what if it goes wrong? And begin to trust that whatever happens is part of a larger unfolding. This doesn't make you passive, it makes you present. You become available to life, responsive rather than reactive. Your choices flow from clarity, not resistance. The mind quiets not because you've silenced it, but because it finally rests in trust. When you begin to surrender, fear loses its grip because fear feeds on resistance. Fear says, what if? But surrender replies, even if. Fear depends on the illusion of separation. The belief that you are alone in life is something that can turn against you. But surrender reveals that there is no separation, that life is not something outside of you, it is you. The wave doesn't fight the ocean, it flows with it because it knows it was never separate. The same is true for you. When you stop struggling to control the tide, you realize the ocean has always carried you safely even through the storms. There will come moments when surrender feels like falling, like stepping into the unknown without ground beneath you. The mind will panic because it cannot understand what it cannot predict. But this is where the miracle happens. Because when you finally let go, you discover that you were never falling, you were floating. You were held all along by the same force that spins the stars and grows the trees. What you thought was chaos was only the dance of life moving perfectly in rhythm. The moment you stop resisting that movement, you taste freedom, not the temporary freedom of pleasure or success, but the eternal freedom of being in harmony with what is. Surrender transforms suffering into grace. When you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin to trust that everything is happening for you, your pain becomes your teacher, your loss becomes your opening, your uncertainty becomes your liberation. The need to know fades away, replaced by a quiet confidence that whatever comes is exactly what is needed. You begin to see that surrender is not an act of weakness. It is the highest form of strength because it requires faith in something beyond the self. It is the courage to live without guarantees, to love without conditions, to exist without control. Freedom through surrender is not a destination. It is a way of being. It is the gentle letting go, moment by moment, of everything you thought you needed to be safe. It is trusting the current of life enough to stop swimming against it. It is realizing that the very force you feared losing control to was never against you. It was you in your truest, most infinite form, guiding yourself home.